Hi everyone, it's Miss Wallace and Miss Lamb back for another lesson. Last week we learned all about adaptations for animals and plants that live on land. Well, this week we're still sticking with adaptations, but this is all for animals and plants that live in water. Remember that adaptations are things that help organisms survive in the habitat that they live in. So we're going to go through many different water habitats and show you the differences between these habitats and the adaptations that the animals and plants have in each one. So here we go. All right. So our first stop is lakes and ponds. Okay. So you see the pictures, there's all of these lake and pond habitats. There are many kinds of water habitats. Some are salty, some are not. Water found on Earth that's not salty is called fresh water, and lakes and ponds are freshwater habitats. Here we go, friends. Ponds and lakes are examples of freshwater habitats. Lakes and ponds are wide bodies of waters that do not flow very much. These habitats are divided into zones. The zone close to the shore has many living things living in it. Many kinds of water plants grow near the shore. Their roots grow in the soil at the bottom, but the water is shallow enough that their leaves still get plenty of sunlight. Other plants, such as water lilies and water hyacinth, float near the shore. Many animals, including ducks, snails, and fish, eat those water plants, just like these that you see here. Further away from the shore is the open water zone. Floating plants and plant-like organisms called algae can grow here, but the water is usually too deep for non-floating plants to reach light. The deep part of a lake or pond where light does not reach is called the deep water zone. No plants can grow there. Catfish, worms, and bacteria are found in the deep water zone. They feed on dead plants and animals that fall down from above. So right here you see a picture of a catfish, okay? He's got these crazy whiskers on his face. Catfish spend much of their time in the dark near the bottom of a pond or lake. Their whiskers are adapted to sense chemicals, which helps catfish find food in the dark. And remember, they live in the bottom of a lake or a pond, and they feed on dead plants that have fallen down. Up here, we have water lilies. They have air-filled pockets in their leaves. This helps them float on the surface of the water so that they can get the sunlight that they need. And then, of course, we've got this sweet snapping turtle. He has webbed feet that help it swim through water like many, many other water animals. Okay?
All right, our next body of water is rivers. So unlike lakes and ponds, the water in rivers and streams is always on the move. So the animals and plants living here have to have different adaptations or they would get washed away. The kind of living things found in a river or stream depends on how fast the water is moving. The faster the water moves, the harder it is for living things to make a home. Because of this, fast-moving streams are often clear. Very few plants and animals live there. In places where the water slows down, more living things will be found. Many plants can grow near the banks of rivers and streams. Tiny plants called mosses make a fuzzy green carpet on rocks in and around rivers and streams. Mosses have hair-like structures that cling to rocks. This keeps them in place. Insects also live in flowing water. They can often be found floating on the surface, clinging to plants, or living under rocks in shallow water. Of course, many fish are also found in rivers and streams. Fish must constantly swim upstream so that they're not carried away by the current. So the water's moving a lot, so all of those plants and animals have different ways to adapt. Think about a time that you've been standing in water, maybe it knocked you over. That's what those plants and animals are battling. Over in the bottom picture, that's the algae. Plant-like living things called green algae attach firmly to rocks. This helps keep the algae from being washed away. Algae also have very flexible bodies. This allows them to bend with the flowing water instead of being broken. If you've ever stepped on a rock with algae, it's very, very slippery. Many stream-dwelling fish and tadpoles have suction discs. These discs can hold on to rocks to help keep the animal from being washed away. And river otters, just like that turtle on the previous page, have webbed feet for swimming and streamlined bodies that glide easily through the water.
I love river otters. They're my favorite animals to see when I visit the Tallahassee Museum.
My friend saw one in a lake while she was running this morning.
Oh my gosh, they're so cute. Oh, but I don't think they're very friendly.
I've heard they're not at all. Don't touch an otter.
No, they're really cute to look at though. Okay, friends, now we're in soggy bogs like swamps and marshes and yucky, humid places that my hair would go crazy in. This is a wetland habitat. These are very muddy, wet habitats. And again, there's many adaptations that plants and animals have to live there. A wetland is an area of land covered by a shallow layer of water for most of the year. Bogs, swamps, and marshes are three types of wetlands. Bogs tend to be covered in a layer of thick mud. Swamps, like the one shown here, are forested wetlands. The trees often have roots both above and below the water. Marshes are wetlands without trees. Grasses and reeds are common marsh plants. Wetland plants have special tissues that carry air from the plant's leaves to its roots. Marshes on ocean coasts are covered with salt water. Plants here also have adaptations to get rid of excess salt, like that mangrove tree that we studied a while back that has a way to get rid of salt, even though it grows in a saltwater habitat. Wetlands are very important habitats. Many kinds of birds make their nests in wetlands. Migrating water birds use shore wetlands as rest areas on their journeys to spend winter in warmer habitats. Wetlands are also home to many different kinds of plants and animals, such as carnivorous plants, insects, fish, snakes, alligators, frogs, and even giant water rodents. So here, Miss Lamb, we've got 5 pictures of birds' feet, right? So if we numbered these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which ones, Miss Lamb, would you say are adapted for the wetland?
I think a wetland creature might need webbed feet. However, if it wants to blend in, I think it would be number 1.
Yep, number 1. And then also there might be some webbed animals. I see now I can annotate. It wouldn't let me annotate before. So yes, definitely number 1. And there is one more.
I think the webbed foot, so he can swim.
Definitely. Now down here, we've got an alligator. Can you see him? American alligator. Alligators live in American wetlands. Their eyes and nostrils are raised to enable them to hide in shallow water while hunting. That would be super scary to see. Then here we've got pitcher plants. They grow in many bogs. Bogs tend to lack certain nutrients in the soil. So the pitcher plants get these nutrients by trapping and digesting insects. And then up here, just like what Miss Lamb said, you've got the bird with the very long legs. This is a heron. These legs blend in with wetland reeds, so fish don't notice herons hunting from above. My annotate thing won't come back up so that I can erase the pictures.
We can go around it. So one of the harshest habitats on Earth is found on the edge of the ocean along coastlines. So think about if you've ever been to an ocean or maybe even the Gulf and those waves crashing in, it can get very rough. The place where the ocean meets the coast is called the intertidal zone. Every day, the tide comes in and covers the intertidal zone in salt water. Then the tide goes out and the intertidal zone is exposed to air and bright sunlight. Between high tide and low tide, the intertidal zone is constantly bashed by waves. Living things in the intertidal zone have adaptations to protect their bodies from being crushed, washed away, or dried out. Seaweed, sea stars, and sea urchins, barnacles, clams, and oysters, tube worms, and sea anemones call the intertidal zone home. So if we look at our examples there, it says put an H next to what the sea anemone and clam look like during high tide. So which one of those, Ms. Wallace, do you think would happen during high tide when the water is up?
So during high tide, that means the water is way high up on the shore. So these organisms probably can get their food at that time, right? So I would imagine that this clam would be for high tide, and also maybe this opened sea anemone right here. Is that right?
That's right.
Yay!
So then during low tide, it would be the other pictures where they kind of look closed. They're protecting themselves from predators and protecting their bodies. Over on the next page, we have a plant that would live in the intertidal zone. Seaweed have strong, flexible bodies that can endure constant waves. They attach to rocks to keep from being washed away. Many have air pockets that help the tops of the seaweed float and stay in the sunlight when the tide is in. And we've seen a few other plants that grab onto the rocks and have air pockets too. Serpulas are marine worms. They live in hard tubes that protect their fragile bodies. When the tide is out, the worms retreat into the tubes.
Just like the pictures from below, when the water is really high, they're able to come out and play.
And sea stars have structures on their arms that act like suction cups. So there's those suction cups again. This helps sea stars anchor themselves to rocks so they don't get washed away when waves batter the shore. I hear lots of similarities between these plants and animals to the ones we met in the river with that moving water.
Yes, absolutely. They have to have a way to cling on so they don't get washed away. And now we're in the ocean, out to sea. The ocean is the largest habitat on Earth. Life can be found all the way from its edges down to its deepest depths. Like lakes, the ocean can be divided into zones. Light reaches the top zone, known as the photic zone. Close to shore, coral and seaweeds live. Colorful fish and pygmy seahorses blend with brightly colored coral reefs. In the open ocean, floating seaweed and tiny plant-like organisms use the sun to make food. The photic zone is also full of animal life, including jellyfish, squid, fish, and sharks, dolphins, and whales. Underneath the sunlit zone is the part of the ocean where light does not reach. This part is called the aphotic zone. It's very dark and very cold. Some animals move back and forth between the photic and aphotic zones. Then we have the ocean floor, covered with mountains, valleys, and canyons, much like on land. There are undersea volcanoes and hot springs called vents. Hot water full of minerals shoots out of these deep sea vents. Many living things depend on the heat and use the minerals to make food. Animals living here are very different from other ocean animals. Their bodies are adapted to living under extreme water pressure. Most cannot survive close to the surface. So those animals that live in the very, very bottom depths of the ocean, they stay there. That's just what they need to survive. If they were to swim farther up, they wouldn't have everything they need to survive. So here we've got this little matching activity, Miss Lamb. You up for it?
I'm ready.
All right. So which one was the aphotic zone? Seaweeds and corals, mid-ocean level, or animals that glow are found there?
That was the second one you talked about.
Yep, that was this one.
Was the middle one. So mid-ocean level?
Absolutely. All right, what about the deep ocean floor?
That makes me think of Finding Nemo and animals that glow. So
Yes.
the glowing animals.
Yes. And
But
then, of
on
course,
this, could Nemo really go down to the deep ocean floor?
I really don't think he could. He doesn't have the adaptations that would help him. And I bet that if he swam over one of those shooting hot springs, the water would be way too hot for him.
Probably. So that part of the movie was fiction.
Definitely. And then we've got our photic zone, which is where seaweeds and corals live, and that's closer to the top of the ocean. So here we've got some animals. Let me erase all of my stuff. There we go. All right. So we've got marine tube worms. These live near the hot vents at the bottom of the ocean. They filter tiny organisms out of the water to get their food. And then, of course, we have this anglerfish, like what Miss Lamb was just talking about in Finding Nemo. Deep sea fish live in total darkness. Some have adaptations that allow them to produce light. They use this light to lure food or find mates. Hey, didn't we read about another fish that lives in the bottom, but it wasn't an ocean? Where was it? I think it was a pond.
I think he had whiskers.
Yes.
It makes me think of a cat.
Yes, and we know you love cats. So yes, the catfish and the anglerfish are similar because they both live in the bottom of their water habitat. Pretty cool. All right, then up here we've got jellyfish. They float in the open ocean, catching fish that accidentally wander into their tentacles. Here we've got many coral reefs. They're so pretty with lots of beautiful colors. Coral reefs are found near many coasts. They're filled with a great diversity of sea life, again, just like Finding Nemo. Up here, we've got large floating mats of seaweed called sargassum, provides a safe habitat for many animals, including young sea turtles. And then there's this shark right here. Would you like to be swimming and have a shark come near you, Miss Lamb?
I think I would be very scared.
Very, very scared. He's got really, really sharp teeth. That's really, really scary. I bet he has those sharp teeth to help him catch the fish that he eats.
So sharp teeth will help him shred those fish.
Yes, that's an adaptation for him, isn't it?
It is.
There we go. Is it my turn or your turn?
It's my turn. It wasn't loading over here, so I couldn't see anything. So we talked about lots of bodies of water, and you've probably heard that sometimes the oceans are suffering and we're hurting them. So most living things are very well adapted to their habitats. But when their habitats change, living things can be put in danger. Today, many changes are taking place in ocean habitats. Large areas of coral reef are losing their color, a process called coral bleaching. Many bleached patches are dying. Possible reasons for coral bleaching include rising water temperatures, so the ocean is getting warmer, and ocean pollution. So when you think about if you accidentally bleach your clothes, they turn white. Well, the coral doesn't only lose their color, but it actually kills that when we talk about coral bleaching.
Right. You remember on the page before, all that beautiful, pretty coral.
And look at the color it is on this page. It's a very pale, almost white color.
Right. So I don't think this coral is doing very well at all.
Another problem in the oceans is people take too many fish out of the sea. Animals that depend on these fish for food do not have enough to eat. The fish that are left cannot reproduce fast enough to rebuild their population. It is possible that the fish we and many other animals depend on for food could become extinct. That's called overfishing, when people take too much. Another problem is some countries dump their garbage in the ocean. This harms sea life. Chemicals from the trash are harmful. Living things in the ocean easily get caught in trash, such as the plastic rings used to package drink cans. Recently, a giant patch of garbage has been discovered floating in the middle of the ocean. Ocean currents have brought garbage from many countries to one area, and now the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is about twice the size of the state of Texas.
That's awful. Don't throw your trash in the ocean.
And cut your soda rings before you dispose of them so it doesn't harm animals if it does get out.
Absolutely, that's so important. And I know that companies now are trying to come up with those soda can holders to be biodegradable, so that if they do end up in the ocean, it won't hurt animals at all.
That would be really good for the animals. All right, and the do the math has an important fact in there. About 75% of Earth's surface is covered by oceans.
This is why the ocean habitat is the largest in the world.
Do you know what fraction 75% would be?
Well, 75% always reminds me of 75 cents. And I know that 75 cents is 3/4. So I'm going to say 3/4.
That's right.
Yes.
I always think of quarters too.
I always think of quarters. All right. So before we talk to you about your brain check, we are together going to do this Sum It Up. So let me turn my annotate on again. All right, here we go. You want to go? I'll do one and you'll do the next, Miss Lamb.
Sounds good.
All right. So many animals in wetlands have adaptations that allow them to blend with grasses while they hunt for food. This reminds me of the birds that have the really long legs that look just like the grasses. So I think that would be this picture right here. That's going to be E. Okay.
Number 2, seaweed such as sargassum lives near the surface of the ocean. So I'm looking at the pictures, looking for the ocean and the seaweed floating, and I think it's C.
I think so too. All right, because rivers and streams flow, plants that live in them must have adaptations that keep them from floating away. Well, if I look right here, this is moss, and this is on a rock. So it can't float away. It's going to cling to the rock. So I think this belongs with B.
Number 4, many animals living in lakes and ponds have webbed feet to help them swim. If I look at the pictures, I see the frog is swimming, and remembering a frog's feet, they're webbed, so D.
Yep. And then, of course, we have intertidal zones. Many animals have protective shells or casings that they retreat into during low tide so that people and other animals can't find them and snatch them up. And so I'm going to say that that is A. I think we did pretty good with that one, Miss Lamb.
I think we did.
All right, so I'm going to erase real quick. And now we will talk about your brain check. And remember, your brain check will be the very last thing you do this week for science. All right, so right here you have a fill in the blank activity. And when you guys get your brain check through Teams, you're gonna see a text box down here instead of this crossword puzzle looking thing. And in that text box, we're gonna give you a word bank so that you can choose which words go in the right blanks. We're also going to allow you to have access to the ebook for this lesson so that if you need to go back into this YouTube or if you need to go back into the book to help you find some of these answers, you have that ability.
On this page, there will be text boxes for the questions, but you'll notice number 3 says circle the animal that is the best adapted to live in the intertidal zone. They will have letters next to them. So then you can just pick the letter that matches the question.
Okay. Oh, look, here's that catfish and that anglerfish. Did we talk about that?
I think we did.
I think we did.
That bird looks familiar too.
Yes, it does. That bird looks very familiar. Friends, it's been so fun to record for you. We miss seeing your faces. Please continue to reach out to us if you need any help at all. And remember that your brain check is the last thing you do. You'll have access to the ebook so that you can see it just like it is right here. And you can go back and watch Miss Lamb and I on this YouTube anytime you want. Thanks, guys.